And welcome back to CentralCoastRadio.com. Well, director Eli Roth has made his name as one of the biggest horror directors in the world, and he is back with a brand new film called Thanksgiving. And of course, if you're a fan of horror, you'll probably already have a little bit of an inkling for Thanksgiving, because this, of course, was based on a trailer that was in the Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez film from a few years ago. It was one of the trailers that was in between the films as part of that series. But Eli Roth has gone and turned it into a complete film. And now we have Thanksgiving, a film that starts off with a Black Friday sale going horribly wrong when a store hasn't got the proper security in place, and the result is several deaths. Now, a year later, suddenly a killer has emerged, dressing up as a very, very famous Thanksgiving character, and has suddenly started killing people who were associated with the sale. It leaves Sheriff Eric Newland, played by Patrick Dempsey, trying to solve the crime, while people like Jessica, played by Nell Verlaque, find themselves right in the middle of what is happening in what becomes a pretty predictable teenage slasher horror. Lee, what were your thoughts on Thanksgiving?
Well, I liked that it was a little different in that the Black Friday sale occurred in a Costco type store, but it just showed like how selfish people could be and how people were willing to kill for basically the material things that they wanted. They did not care about the people around them. And, we've seen that in real life at Boxing Day sales and things like that, where people just become so overwhelmed by their own needs and desires.
Believe they had electrical items for $5.
Yeah. So they've turned that kind of scenario, a big shopper's day where people become just crazy, and developed it into a slasher film, basically. This kind of film, though, had kind of the same feel or as movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream, and in terms of the deaths throughout this, I felt like it had a Final Destination feel, with the kills being quite creative. There was quite a few kills, I have to say. So I've seen a lot of horrors, and this story seemed a little different, although you could see bits of other movies like that maybe they'd borrowed from or had been inspired by, those kind of teen thrillers, I guess you would say. Of course, there were the turn your head away moments and, oh, that's disgusting moments. There is a particular scene where a table is set for Thanksgiving dinner, and when the invite goes out to those who are to attend, the realization sets in that the guests are a target and will likely be killed. That scene, there's a few things within those scenes that are just like, oh, that is gross. Like, I can't even look at that. But also, through the movie, there's the typical hold your breath moments, hoping a character will escape a killer. And for a time, you are kept guessing who the killer is. In fact, for most of the movie. But I have to say, I was proud of myself because I worked it out. However, Dave, you were whispering to me who you thought the killer was, and I was giggling because I thought you were wrong, but I was right.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say something pretty controversial here. I think Eli Roth is actually kind of overrated in the horror world. I think he's done an amazing job as a producer over the years, but I've never been that impressed by him as a director. Of course, he rose to fame in 2002 when he directed Cabin Fever, which was a okay kind of horror film. But then his name kind of expanded when he did Hostel, which, let's be honest, Hostel was basically torture porn for people that like Saw. Like, it was inspired by Saw kind of thing. And the only two movies he's made since then that I really, really liked were The Green Inferno and Knock Knock, which even Knock Knock I thought was a little bit derivative of some European films. But he's kind of got this name where he's up alongside people like James Wan and John Carpenter, and like, yeah, and Blumhouse and places like that. And to be honest, I don't think he deserves to be there. Like I said, like, he's made two movies that I've really loved in modern times since he made Cabin Fever, but I just find quite often his films are very derivative of other films, and that is definitely the case here. I was finding myself at different times during this film thinking, I know this scene, it's out of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, there's even a parade scene in this where they're trying to spot the guy. Now, if you remember I Know What You Did Last Summer, same thing. Sarah Michelle Gellar up on the float trying to spot the killer in the crowd. I thought there were other parts in this that were very similar to Scream. There was another part that, I know it's a lesser known horror film, but was very similar to a scene. In fact, the whole premise is very similar to Valentine, Jamie Blanks' movie with David Boreanaz. It was so similar to other films. The only thing that set this film apart was I thought Eli Roth was very, very creative with his kills in this film. There was some very, very creative kills, but again, there were kills in this that in the screening that we were in, and it was an Australian premiere, people burst out laughing. And I don't know about you, but if I direct a horror movie, I kind of want people to be disgusted or in shock at a kill, not laughing at it, kind of thing. Like, you and I saw a brilliant horror just recently called There's Something in the Barn, and there was some comical moments in that, but that was because the film mixed horror and comedy. But if I'm doing a slasher horror as a director, I don't want people laughing at my kills. I want people kind of like sitting there kind of shocked almost. And so I thought the film kind of lacked in that sense. I thought the other thing that the film lacked in was having characters that you care about. Like, there's some characters in this, including the father of the main character, that you kind of want to see die because the guy is despicable. And I don't know whether that was something they deliberately set about doing with this film, but I just thought there was so much in this film that I'd seen in other films, and to be honest, it's not going to be one of those horror movies that I'm going to remember for years to come. And I know I've said recently I've been disappointed in some of the horrors that have come out this year, but things like Five Nights at Freddy's and this one, they're going to be films that I forget. They're not going to become classic horror films that I'm going to remember, like the ones I said before, like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and Valentine. But look, it's an enjoyable film. I think if you're a horror fan, you're gonna have to go along and see it so that you can say that you've seen Eli Roth's new horror film. And like, the kills are creative, but outside of that, I don't think there's much in this film. In fact, there's another part in this film I think is very, very similar to My Bloody Valentine, which you and I saw earlier this year, which I would actually think is a better film than this one. So, look, I wasn't that impressed with Thanksgiving. I thought it was an okay kind of horror film. It was fun to watch, but there was too much of it to me that just wasn't that creative. So, what are you going to give Thanksgiving and why, Lee?
I'm giving it 2.5 out of 5. It was fun to watch in parts. I liked that it wasn't too obvious who the killer was. I did like the Costco type shop scenes at the start. But yeah, I've seen
Superstore with horror.
Yeah, but I have seen a lot of horrors and thrillers over time, and I'm giving it 2.5 because it just wasn't at that level of one that I wouldn't go back and see it again. I'm happy to have seen it. I wasn't bored while I was watching it. But it's just not one that I would probably see again. Yeah,
I'm going to give it 2.5 out of 5 as well. I'm like you. I don't think this is going to become a classic horror film. It's probably going to be one of those films, if I ever watch it again, it'll be because some friend pulls it out on a Halloween screening party or something like that. But yeah, I would rather go back and watch the films that it's kind of saying that it pays tribute to instead. So 2.5 out of 5 for both of us for Thanksgiving. It is on general release, so go and check it out in cinemas if you're an Eli Roth or a horror fan. It's got a general release, so it should be showing in a cinema near you. You're on centralcoastradio.com.